So today we'll be starting off with salts and chemical analysis. Preparation of salts से start करते हैं. Now, a salt is a compound that is formed when the hydrogen atom in an acid is replaced by a metal. For example, tell me an acid.
Hydrochloric acid,
ठीक है. And now I'm going to replace this hydrogen with a metal. Tell me a metal.
sodium.
Sodium. So what would be the new compound? NaCl. This is what? A salt. Got it?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
for example, if we replace the hydrogen and HCl with potassium atom, the salt potassium chloride would be formed. And salts are an important branch of chemistry due to the varied and important uses of the class of compounds. These uses include fertilizers, batteries, cleaning products, healthcare products, and fungicides. The name of the salt has two parts. The first part comes from the metal or the metal oxide or the metal carbonate used in the reaction, and the second part comes from the acid. And the name of the salt can be determined by looking at the reactants it was actually made up of. For example, hydrochloric acid produces salts that ends with chloride ion. क्लोरीन क्या होता है? Cl2. Cl माइनस का क्या मतलब है? क्लोराइड. तो HCl के जितने भी सॉल्ट्स होंगे दे वुड ऑल एंड विद क्लोराइड. फॉर एग्जांपल, इसके अलावा जैसे सोडियम हाइड्रोक्साइड रिएक्ट विद हाइड्रोक्लोरिक एसिड, तो क्या बनेगा? द फर्स्ट पार्ट वुड कम फ्रॉम द metal, sodium, and the second part is going to come from this chloric, which will turn into chloride. तो क्या नाम हो जाएगा? Sodium chloride. For example, zinc oxide reacts with sulfuric acid to produce zinc, and sulfuric से क्या निकलेगा? Sulfate. Zinc sulfate would be the salt produced. Got it?
Yes.
Some salts can be extracted by mining, but others need to be prepared in the laboratory. There are two key ideas to consider when preparing salts. Is the salt being formed soluble or insoluble in water? अब हमने जब salts को prepare करना है, first we have to decide what are we preparing. Are we trying to prepare a soluble salt or are we trying to prepare an insoluble salt? Is there water of crystallization present in the salt crystals? What is this water of crystallization? For example, एक salt है मेरे पास, copper sulfate. This is copper sulfate salt without water. अगर यहाँ पे एक dot copper sulfate dot H2O लिखा हो, what does this represent? This is hydrated copper sulfate. What does hydrated mean?
It has water in it.
It has water in it. और इस चीज को हम कहते हैं water of crystallization that is present in the copper sulfate crystals. So this is the solubility table that you'll be making today in your register as well, and this is what you have to memorize. Okay. Now looking at the table, if I quickly ask you, tell me, is magnesium sulfate soluble?
Most of them are soluble.
So magnesium sulfate is soluble. What about calcium sulfate,
No, it's insoluble.
lead sulfate, and barium sulfate?
Also insoluble.
Okay. What about aluminium carbonate?
Um, Carbonate. Um,
Aluminum
it
carbonate.
is insoluble.
Good. Okay. Um, Magnesium hydroxides.
Magnesium hydroxides. Insoluble.
Good. अच्छा. Sodium nitrate.
Sodium nitrate. Soluble.
सभी soluble होते हैं ठीक. Nitrates तो सारे soluble. Ethanoids भी and all of that. Now, how do we make a formula? Can you tell me what is the chemical formula of sodium nitrate?
Sodium plus nitrate is equal to sodium nitrate.
ठीक है. What is the chemical formula? NaNO3.
Yeah,
Is this correct? NaNO3.
we have to balance it.
नहीं नहीं. What is the charge on nitrate? -1. ये याद रखने थे. Sulfate -2. इसके अलावा कार्बोनेट -2. और कौन से होते हैं? अमोनियम +1. नोट दिस डाउन, दीज आर इंपॉर्टेंट वंस. फॉस्फेट -3 होता है. गॉट इट?
Yeah.
तो व्हाट विल बी द फॉर्मूला ऑफ सोडियम फॉस्फेट?
Um, NaPO4 -3.
इसका चार्ज -3 है, सोडियम का +1 होता है, क्रॉस देम, रिमेंबर।
Mm-hmm.
फिर ये बनाते हैं
Okay.
इस तरह। दिस इज हाउ यू मेक अ केमिकल फॉर्मूला। व्हाट अबाउट मैग्नीशियम क्लोराइड? मैग्नीशियम इज इन ग्रुप 2,
Mm-hmm.
क्लोरीन इज इन ग्रुप 1, तो क्या फॉर्मूला बनेगा? MgCl2। बट व्हाट इफ वी फॉर्म NaCl, बोथ ऑफ देम हैव अ +1 और Cl का भी -1 चार्ज है, तो ये क्या बनेगा? कैंसल आउट हो जाएंगे, NaCl। करेक्ट।
Yeah.
ओके, व्हाट अबाउट एल्यूमिनियम कार्बोनेट? एल्यूमिनियम इज +3, कार्बोनेट क्या है? -2, तो क्या प्रोडक्ट बनेगा? Al, फिर
G.
Al2CO3 ठीक है,
Mm-hmm.
गुड। टेल मी द फॉर्मूला ऑफ एल्यूमिनियम नाइट्रेट।
It will be Al, um, and then Al3
रॉन्ग।
and NO3
नो। Al का क्या चार्ज है?
+3,
एंड नाइट्रेट
-3
-3 कहाँ लिखा हुआ?
or -1.
-1 है, तो क्या फॉर्मूला बनेगा?
It will be AlNO3.
Got
Yeah.
soluble salts. So the method A would be adding an acid to a solid metal, base or carbonate. This is your very first step of preparing soluble salt. This is the method number A जो हम पढ़ेंगे. We are preparing what? Soluble salts. अब soluble salts के लिए we have to add acid to a solid metal, base or a carbonate. So heat acid until the warm and base carbonate goes stirring constantly until it stops disappearing. Okay, what's the first acid? Heat the acid until warm and then add the metal base or the carbonate and keep stirring constantly until it stops disappearing. Filter the mixture to remove excess base. Transfer the solution to the evaporating basin. और एंड पे यहाँ पे अब आप इसको क्या करोगे आगे? You can crystallize this as well. So you can obtain pure crystals and you can then dry them out. So the method was that add dilute acid into a beaker and heat using a Bunsen burner. Then add the insoluble metal. हम क्या बना रहे हैं? We are preparing soluble salts. For soluble salts, we need an insoluble metal base or a carbonate, little at a time, and then warm dilute acid and stir it until the base is in excess, until it stops dissipating and the suspension of the base forms in the acid. Then filter the base into an evaporating basin to remove the excess base. Heat the solution to evaporate water and to make the solution saturated. Check the solution is saturated by dipping a cold glass rod into the solution and seeing if crystals are forming on the end. Leave the filtrate in the warm place to dry and crystallize and then decant the solution, allow the crystals to dry. So to prepare a soluble salt, ठीक है, अब hydrated copper 2 sulfate. Copper 2 sulfate हमें पता है is a soluble salt. We are preparing what? Preparation of a pure copper 2 sulfate, a soluble salt. To prepare this soluble salt, I needed an acid. ठीक है, कौन सा एसिड चाहिए होगा if we want to produce a sulfate? Sulfuric acid. ठीक है. What if we have to produce a phosphate? Which acid would be used? Phosphoric acid. What if I want to prepare copper 2 chloride? Which acid would you use?
Um,
Hydrochloric acid.
okay.
ठीक है, copper 2 क्लोराइड बनाने के लिए यू वुड बी नीडिंग व्हाट? हाइड्रोक्लोरिक एसिड. कॉपर 2
Hydrochloric.
सल्फेट के लिए सल्फ्यूरिक एसिड. कॉपर 2 कार्बोनेट के लिए कार्बोनिक एसिड. गॉट इट?
Yeah.
And we also have to choose an insoluble base, so we choose copper 2 oxide. And the method was the same one. अब वही था. Add the dilute sulfuric acid into a beaker, heat it up, then add the insoluble base. To prepare a soluble salt, you need an insoluble metal or insoluble base and keep stirring the mixture. Filter it into an evaporating beaker, leave it in a filter in a warm place to dry and crystallize. Decant the excess solution और आपके पास crystals वो dry crystals produce हो जाएंगे. So copper oxide, which was insoluble, ठीक है, reacted with sulfuric acid, ताकि ये जो कॉपर है, हाइड्रोजन would be replaced, क्या बनेगा? Copper sulfate and water. And this copper sulfate is soluble. This is the first method to produce soluble salt. Got it?
Yes.
Method B of preparing soluble salt क्या है? Add alkali and indicator to a conical flask using a pipette. ठीक है, you can see over here an alkali is there and I have added a phenolphthalein indicator as well. Now this burette will be filled with an acid और इसको मैं drop by drop डालता जाऊंगा यानी add the acid to the alkali slowly until the indicator changes the color. ठीक है, and then once the change of color is noted, we are going to note down the volume, that how much acid was reacted to change the color in the alkali, and we're going to repeat the steps for accuracy as well. Then we're going to transfer the solution to an evaporating basin, heat it to partially evaporate water, और end पे दोबारा क्या हो जाएगा? You will be left with the dried crystals that you can clean with a filter paper as well. So the first method was to use a pipette to measure the alkali and pour it in a conical flask and then add a few drops of indicator as well. फिर हमने burette के अंदर डाला acid and started to note the volume. We started adding the acid very slowly from the burette to a conical flask until the indicator changed to an appropriate color. Note and record the final volume of acid in the burette and calculate the volume of acid added. For example, the starting volume of acid and the falling volume of acid. Let's say start with 50 था, final 34 हुआ, which means how much was reacted? 16. Clear?
Yeah.
So when we're doing the experiment the second time, I'm going to add exactly 16 because I know 16 is needed. I won't add the rest of it. I'll only add the same volume that came in the first experiment. Heat it to partially evaporate, leaving a saturated solution और दोबारा उसको आप dry करोगे तो you would have the crystals with you.